Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Gawo. I'm the librarian at the Assyrian Cultural Foundation's Ashurbanipal Library. I'm really happy to participate in today's Nabu Circle Lecture. Before I present our guest speaker for today, I'd like to provide you with some context regarding the purpose behind organizing this lecture series. In ancient Assyria, Nabu, the Lord of Wisdom, was the patron deity of scholars, inspiring a deep reverence for knowledge. A grand library in Nineveh, supported by rulers like Ashurbanipal, elevated the pursuit of knowledge. This intellectual legacy endured, leading to centers of learning like the School of Nisibis, which contributed to the Islamic Golden Age. Despite challenges, including World War I, Assyrians maintained their love of learning, something we carry with us today. The Nabu Circle Lectures by the Assyrian Cultural Foundation bring scholars together to share insights on Assyrian history, literature, language, and culture, preserving the civilization's enduring passion for wisdom. Today, we are pleased to have Dr. Nurgul Celebi as our speaker. Dr. Celebi's topic for today's lecture is the duality of Sin and Shamash in ancient Assyrian religion. Dr. Celebi obtained her bachelor's degree from Marmara University, Faculty of Science and Literature. Her master's degree was obtained from the Syriac Language and Culture Department at Mardin Artuklu University, focusing on Sun and Moon Symbolism in Syriac Tradition for her thesis. For her PhD, she pursued studies in the history of religions at Ankara University, centering on the Sin-Shamash duality and its reflection on religions. As part of the Erasmus exchange program, she spent an academic year at Westfälische Wilhelms-Universität of Münster between 2019 and 2020. She studied the Hebrew Bible at the Evangelical Theology Department. She underwent internships at the London School of Oriental and African Studies in 2016 and Berlin Freie Universität in 2021. Currently, she's pursuing her second PhD in the History of Assyrian program at ELTE University in Budapest, exploring Mesopotamian beliefs and mythologies, and has published papers on these subjects. In addition to her academic pursuits, she has authored 3 novels and contributed to 5 anthologies with her stories. After the lecture, we invite you to stay updated on the latest news and events of the ACF by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. These lectures will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. I'll provide you with links to all our social media platforms in the chat. Now, I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Robert De Caleta, who has played a vital role in coordinating all of these efforts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I just want to briefly say that I'm really grateful to Dr. Celebi for being with us. And I know it's midnight where she is right now, so we really doubly appreciate the fact that she's around. And I want to thank our good friend, Dr. Daniel Sada, who referred us to Dr. Celebi, and tell you that the topic here is a very interesting topic, and Dr. Celebi is a very interesting person. She also has Assyrian roots, which she can talk about at her leisure. And with that, we're really excited to hear about the ancient practice of worshiping Sin and Shamash, and specifically the duality factor in this practice. This is very interesting for us. Today, we are largely Christian people, but this is the faith of our ancestors, and we'd like to learn much more about it. So, Dr. Celebi, we really look forward to hearing what you have to say. And with that, I thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear Robert, and thank you so much, Sarah. And I really appreciate that you invited me to you. As you mentioned, I also have an Assyrian roots too. I'm from Mardin, which is one of the cities of Tur Abdin. And, 108 years ago, there was a genocide there too. So my great-grandmother Zifo, she lost her family there, and one of the Kurdish family, they just tried to protect her, and she was at that time very young, and after a while, without having any family, because she lost her family during this genocide, only a few sisters and one brother left, and unfortunately, she converted to Islam. So I have a Assyrian roots too. So I'm really interested in learning Syriac language and also her belief system and also her culture. That was the main reason that I really want to do my MA in Syriac language and culture department. It was the only and unique department, by the way, in Turkey. But during my MA, I just luckily I just discovered an temple of Sin in Somater. So when I saw that Sin and Shamash, they shared the rock, and they presented together. So I really interested in this duality between them, because there is always might be a possibility between the sun and the moon gods. There might be a kind of duality, in my opinion. So it was really very excited me. Then I continue my study, and I just examined this duality. So today I'm gonna speak about this duality to do, which is a part of my dissertation at Ankara University. The main name was Sin-Shamash duality and its reflections in religions. But today I will only focus on the duality between these two gods. So let's start. Today I will speak the understanding of cosmos and God in Mesopotamia to better understand about this dual structure. Then I will briefly speak about the sun and the moon god. As a third subtitle, I will focus on the temporal duality of Sin and Shamash. Then as a fourth subtitle, I will speak about universal duality of these two gods. For centuries, Mesopotamia has been melting pot of various belief systems and a fertile ground for the emerge of several civilizations. The diverse Mesopotamian beliefs include a large number of gods and myths that have become an integral part of the culture tapestry of Middle East and Anatolia. Although Mesopotamian beliefs are polytheistic, the focus of this lecture is on the dual structure between the sun and the moon god. This dual structure is observed at the focal points of Sin and Shamash in Mesopotamian beliefs. This dual structure is examined and categorized from two different aspects, the temporal and the universal. It has been concluded that the dual structure of Sin and Shamash is complementary, not a kind of struggling of the contrast. Based on the data obtained, it is clear that the allocation of responsibilities between these two deities highlights the duality between the netherworld and upper world. So I just want to also focus on about the anthropomorphic understanding of these gods in Mesopotamia. Because you know these kind of gods, they are always presented as human beings, and it's really well known from Mesopotamian mythologies, which the ancient perceived most gods, excluding the creator gods like Tiamat, Apsu, or Mummun, as sharing human-like traits. Consequently, the Mesopotamian pantheon included many gods who are married, bore offspring, and exhibited human-like tendencies. Among them are Sin, the moon god, and Shamash, the sun god. You may know about these two gods, and their relationship can be classified as a father-son duality. And the moon god in the Sumerian period called, also known as Nanna, but it's mostly from Akkadian period known as Suen or Enzo. And during the Mesopotamian time, the Babylonian theologians, they classified their major gods in a hierarchical numerical order. And in this order, Sin was presented by the number of 30. And he was the god of the truth and the healing and fertility. Here you see a kuduro. I put an example. And this is the crescent of the moon. And here is also the 8-point star, which represented our lovely goddess Ishtar, and also the sun disk of Shamash. And the sun god, it's known in Sumerian period as Utu. According to the Babylonian theologians' classification again, Shamash was presented by the number of 20, and he was just under of his father Sin. And he is the god of justice. And let's speak about Cosmo's understanding of Mesopotamian beliefs to better understand how the Mesopotamian civilizations think about the cosmos. The agricultural societies of Mesopotamia taught that the universe consists of 2 hemispheres. So the netherworld and the upper world. Accordingly, these 2 opposite parts, imagined as the realm of light and darkness, were in a sense of reflection of each other. In short, it is understood that the people of antiquity believed that the universe had a dual structure. It was believed that the gods who were in charge of maintaining the order of the universe undertook various tasks within this dual structure. Let's look deeper into the disorder of the universe. So the balance and also the order in this cosmos are reflected in the relationship between the moon and the sun to the Mesopotamian kingdoms and kings. Although both Sin and Shamash have their own distinct roles in the royal ideology of Assyria and Babylonia, of course, at the same time, the king being especially associated with the sun god through his power to maintain the order in the cosmos. These 2 deities were important to the Mesopotamian kings as a pair, not separately, as a pair. This is very important for the dual structure too. So the importance of Sin and Shamash in this respect is underlined especially by the astrological or astronomical observations that were constantly reported to the royal court. This first appearance of the moon at the beginning of the month was crucial in this respect. But equally important was the opposition of the moon and sun at the midpoint in the appearance of the 2 gods in the eastern and western horizons at the sunrise too. So the ideal date for the opposition of the moon and the sun was the 14th day, which was portrayed as a positive omen for that day. Furthermore, the basic concept of regularity and order that was connected to the moon and the sun is also reflected outside of the astrological context too. As the importance of the opposition of the moon and the sun is considered, a very important factor is found in the cultic topography of the Middle Assyrian Sin and Shamash temple in Ashur. There were always kelas of these 2 gods were located opposite each other, thereby fixing the moon and the sun permanently in their positions in contrast to each other in the sky. The plan of the temple was later changed, of course, but its nature as a dual temple of the moon and the sun remained the same. It is very important to note that the cultic setting for Sin and Shamash in a dual temple in Ashur was later adopted in both Dur Sharukin and Nineveh, when they became the capitals of the empire, of course. Among the Assyrian centers of royal power, it was only in Kalhu that Sin and Shamash did not share a temple together. This is also very important because it will be very useful to look at the temporal dimensions of these two deities as a subtle duality shared by these two gods. I will speak about the temporal duality. I just try to examine this section in 4 subtitles, as you see here. The daily movement of the sun and moon, it was also very important. It has a dual structure too. And monthly and annual movement of the sun and moon. And the equinox, they are also very important. I will speak about Akitu too here. And lunar and solar eclipses. These are really very important to better understanding of temporal duality between these two gods. Let's have it just look deeper to daily movement of these two gods. Through observing the daily movements of the sun and the moon, the agricultural communities ascribed divine significance to them. The cycle of light and the darkness not only symbolizes the complementarity of day and night, but also reveals the dual structure between these two gods. The perfect circular path followed by Sin and Shamash in the sky each day without encountering one another, with the moon representing the darkness and the sun representing the light, is likely the most remarkable characteristic of their dual structure, I guess. And the axis mundi is a delicate area that is believed that to stabilize the realm of the dead and the sky, functioning as an axis to which the sun and the moon delegate their duties. It's also an important point of this dual structure too. The two extremes of this axis separated by an angle of 180 degrees are also called the east and the west gates. In State Archives of Assyria, we have a lot of texts about these gates too. I will show you some cylinders still in the other slides. And one of these gates was thought that provide access to the realm of the dead, and the other is also used by Sin-Shamash to ascend to the sky. It's a kind of changing their duties. It's also very interesting for me, and also it's interesting for this dual structure too. The notion that night was under the authority of Sin and the daytime hours belong to Shamash is also portrayed in the expression Sin-Shamushi Shamash Shakal Umi, Sin of the night, Shamash of every day. This is also very interesting sentences too, because we know more about these two gods qualities according to this kind of cuneiforms too. And this is also used to beseech the Sin and Shamash on multiple occasions. Similarly, a bilingual litany containing ode or prayer by different cosmic forces like stars, sunsets, and sunrise, light and darkness, defines Sin and Shamash by their authority concerning the day and the night. As the complementary roles of Sin-Shamash are shared and hymn from ETCLC, the exaltation of Inanna, this is also very important. As you see, you can read the text here. And the distinct roles of these two deities are most apparent in the two parts of the day and night cycle here. As described in this hymn, the deities Anu, Enlil, and Ea divided the day and night with impartially between the Sin and Shamash. And I also want to show you this cylinder seal, the Ada seal. This is from Sipar and it's in British Museum. This is very typical example while Shamash was just rising from the netherworld, as you see here. This is Shamash, and here the Ishtar, and these two, they are the mountains of Zagros. On this seal, the deity Shamash is represented with his sunrise, you see here, and holds a blade as it emerges from between two mountains with a square tube. The rising of the sun from the east and behind the mountain was observed by the ancients, and they interpreted this as a gateway to the netherworld existing behind the mountains. Although there is controversy about this seal, cylinder seal, it's thought that the mountains are Zagros, as I mentioned, and still this area, as you see, the archaeologists, they call this Mesopotamia. However, this is very important to know that for a certain, this ascension of Shamash from the netherworld and is imagined behind these mountains. They always think about this kind of images in Mesopotamian time. And let's speak about a bit more the east and west gates. Here I also shared one example from Enuma Anu Enlil. Another, yeah, this gate. Also, there is another seal too. You may see, I cannot see here because of my screen, but you can see here, I guess. This cylinder seal also depicts the east gate behind the mountains, as you see. And here Shamash rises into the sky between two mountains again, which is again the Zagros. This is also explained in Enuma Elish, as I mentioned here. You can see the journey of the Shamash between netherworld and upper world is mentioned. Although there is no western gate in this cylinder seal, it's known that to be one of the transition points between these two opposite realms. And it was thought that Shamash rose from the east gate, while Sin sank from the west gate and took over the tasks in the netherworlds. This is also very important. And among the Mesopotamian gods, we know that there is no other god who can descend and ascend both netherworld and upper world. We know that Ereshkigal and also his consort Nergal were also the gods of the netherworld, but they cannot go up. They only have their duties in the netherworld. But Sin and Shamash, they were the only gods who could descend in this realm, in upper world and also the netherworld together. And the center of this, with the rise from his shoulders in this, again, let's turn back to this cylinder. You can see Shamash here again. He holds also a knife again, as you see, as the other cylinder seal, which he just cuts his way through to the mountains. The meaning of the symbols, other side, is not very clear, but that one on the right, the star spread, as you see, is closely associated with the sun god. On other side, two attendant gods, they hold the open gates of dawn and which are decorated on top with the figures of the lions and leon. Here also, for me, there is a dual structure again because they use female and male animals together. Nobody mentioned about this. We don't know why they put it there, but it's the kind of dual structure for me. And I always get that kind of things very seriously. And let's continue to the monthly and annual movement of the sun and moon. The fact that the months and seasons follow each other successionally, and that the universe moves in a certain order in seasonal transition led ancient societies to carefully observe the annual movements of the sun and the moon. These observation practices were used to divide the annual cycles of the sun and the moon into monthly periods, and consequently to prepare calendars. This is also very important. According to this two gods movement, these agricultural societies, these civilizations of Mesopotamia, they prepared the calendars. The varying structure of the moon over a 30-day period and the yearly sun cycle that forms the seasons illustrate the existence of a temporal cycle. The moon's phases in particular symbolizes the duality of life and death within this cycle. The time from the waxing crescent moon to the full moon, perceived as representing the stages between the life and the death again, can serve as also a temporal evidence. All cosmic, magical, and religious values of the moon god are linked to its existence. The moon has been regarded a constantly renewable and living entity with an everlasting characteristic. This aspect of moon is perceived through the belief that the moon, like other living organisms, has an end too. So let's go deeper about the lunar cycle of the moon. Here I'll also share the passage from Enuma Elish, which might be a good example for this lunar cycle. As you read here, he made Nannaru comfort the then entrusted to him the night. He assigned to him and the jewel of the night to distinguish the days. Monthly, without choosing, he made him sublime with a crown. At the beginning of the month, as you light up above the land, you will shine with horns to mark the calling of the days. On the 7th day, the crown will be halved. On the 15th day, in the middle of each month, may you stand in opposition. When Shamash sees you on the horizon and diminish in the proper stages and grow backwards. On the day of disappearance, draw near the path of Shamash. On the 13th day, may you stand in conjunction and be equal to Shamash. Here is speaking about the sin, and being equal to Shamash, it's a kind of very important point for this dual structure again. And after the waxing phases, it reached the point where the full moon can be seen in opposition to the sun, after which the waning phase begins. At the end of this cycle, the moon disappears completely as it is in the conjunction with sun. And the endless renewal of the moon from month to month, the movement of the moon and the relationship between Sin and Shamash are depicted in this, again in this cuneiform. The lunar cycle was also presented in the performance of the New Year festival, which is Akitu, as we know, in which Enuma Elish was also recited. They're always mentioning about this dual structure and the rebirth of the nature. And this is also a kind of dual structure again. And the main theme of the epic Enuma Elish, the creation epic, destruction of renewal, are precisely the main qualities of the moon as a celestial object. It's born every month, and then after it has reached its peak, it destroys and it dies. This is also very interesting too. And the concept of the time, which is reflected in the wish for the king to reach old age, is closely related to Sin-Shamash again. And these are the two deities who not only made divine decisions concerning the king manifest by means of their appearance in the sky, but they were the two main cosmic forces in control of the time. This is a kind of temporal evidences again. Furthermore, because of their regularity and never-ending circulation across the sky, and they presented two cosmic constants who would continue rise and set as long as the world itself existed. These aspects of Sin-Shamash is apparent in a letter sent to the king Esarhaddon II by one of his Ashipu Adat Shumu Ushur, in which the sender blesses the king in numerous ways. As one of these blessings, a wish for the dynasty's durability is expressed through an analogy to the moon and the sun. This is also a kind of their understanding of the moon and the sun again. And I want to also speak about the equinox. It's also very interesting too, because you know the balances of this time and the day and night is also very important. Equinox days had a significant importance, therefore, this Mesopotamian communities for them. Inscriptions in the archives of the Assyrian state also demonstrate that equinox days were meticulously calculated and duly observed. Equinox days symbolizes the process of change and transformation, since they coincide with the transition periods between the seasons. And the vernal equinox was traditionally considered the time when the earth sprang to life, crops thrived, and nature was regenerated, marking the most fertile period of the year. And Mesopotamian civilizations valued the equinox, especially for organizing spring festivals, which is also equity again, and celebrating the harvest season and the festival of rebirth. And death and rebirth, let's just focus a bit more about these two concepts again. While the spring equinox represents the renewal, rebirth, and the new year, the autumn equinox represents the period of death and the winter. Ancient people believe that in the equinox, when the sun and the moon are balanced, two opposite periods, such as death and life, are equalized too. The equinox, when the sun and the moon are balanced, are a kind of reflection of their relationship, these two gods' relationship. Because as in the equinox, it was understood that these two are sometimes of equal importance, and sometimes one of them prevails over the other, the father sometimes, or the sun maybe. Although this balance varies from time to time, as I mentioned, it is an analogical of the struggle between father and son, sometimes, not always, of course. And the structure in which a fully dual form can be observed is balanced during this equinox and provides a universal cycle with the equal position of the Sin and Shamash. Here, death and rebirth reflect the most prominent characteristic of duality. And also eclipses were very important for Mesopotamian civilizations too. These societies, they always carefully observed the periods of eclipses when neither the moon or nor the sun were presented in the sky. These times were the most dangerous times for them. Sometimes they just try to detrimental effects caused by eclipses, and they eliminate any associated bad omens. During the eclipses, a substitute king ritual, which is Shar Puhi Star Puhi, was performed to protect the king and the kingdom from the bad omens. Because, as I mentioned, they believe that these times are the most dangerous times. During this period, many predictions were made, and people were cautious to prevent disasters. in ancient Mesopotamian communities, eclipses were significant events, and they could potentially disturb the moon's and the month's role in maintaining the balance in the sky. Therefore, during this period of darkness, it was crucial to maintain the balance between the netherworld and the upper world, while preserving the dual structure of these opposite realms. During the lunar and solar eclipses, the boundary between these two realms was thought that disappeared, and the duties of these two gods were endangered. So sometimes they believe that the evil and the evil spirits or the demons might attack to the sky, and they have to just protect the celestial bodies or the celestial gods from this bad or the evil and the demons. So they were really take care about the eclipses a lot. And I also shared an example from State Archives of Assyria again. As you see, this is a kind of indicating of the eclipses. And here, if there is an eclipse in Sivan on the 14th day and the moon god in his eclipses becomes dark on the east side above and clears on the west side below, the north wind rises during the evening. Watch the torches and middle watch. You observe his eclipses and keep the north wind in mind. Thereby, a decision is given for Ur, and the king of Ur will experience famine. Deaths will become many. As for the king of Ur, his son will wrong him, but Shamash will catch the son who wronged his father, and he will die in the mourning place of his father. A son of the king who had not been named for kingship will seize the throne. I also put two more examples from Akkadian period. I mostly focus on the Assyrian period and Assyrian text, but we know that this kind of eclipses also mentioned the Sumerian period and also the Akkadian period too. But I think the number of these kind of texts are not so much as the Assyrian ones. And here is another example, the prior to Nabu concerning the witchcraft. And also you see here, the same understanding is here also can be observed. And now I'm gonna speak about the universal duality between these two gods, because it's also important. I also just classified this aspects too in 4 subtitle too. Here again, I shared the same cylinder seal to talk about the journey of the sun and the moon between netherworld and the upper world. And the sun god with his rays again, you see here, and even we don't have any example of sin represented about this journey between the netherworld and the upper world. We know from the Assyrian text from State Archives of Assyria, so we know that also Sin has that kind of journey, and he is also just downing into the netherworld and just rising to the sky, as same as the Shamash do. But we only have Shamash depictions and represented in this cylinder seal. And these two gods, task sharing of illuminating the universe, it's also very important because their duties are always together. They always share these duties. The daily sky of the sun and the moon here reveals that they are positioned 180 degrees apart. Their joint task of illuminating the universe also always change during the night and the day. And thus, it's very well known by the Mesopotamian civilization. the sun illuminates the universe during daylight hours. But of course, the hours might change. But as I mentioned before, during this equinox, they have the balance. So, and these gods, as I mentioned, they have another task sharing about the judgment too, because after people die, they believe that this Mesopotamian civilizations believe that while Sin and Shamash they visit the netherworld, they also judge the deaths also. So the theme of the moon and the sun as joint divine powers supporting the throne of the this Assyrian king was also introduced in the inscriptions of Esarhaddon, as I talk about it a bit. And there's another also important example, but I will speak about Ashurbanipal also, because we know that Esarhaddon's inscriptions also further used by his son while he was just supporting about this divine duality between sun and Shamash. And the stability and regularity of the moon and the sun in connection with this royal power was recurring the theme in both of their inscriptions. The regular appearance of the moon and the sun at the beginning and in the middle of the month are given a prominent position in the passage, and which describes a proper astrological omens regarding the ascent of Esarhaddon on the Assyrian throne. And here, two important aspects of these deities are also depicted too. The constant and regular movement of the moon and the sun in the sky, and the function of these deities as the divine judges who made the decision concerning the land and the people, not only about that people, about their judgment, but at the same time, the living people too. And here also you can see the truth and the justice. Shamash was the truth and the justice god, and during the this judgment process, he gives the decisions. And another task sharing of these two gods are maturation process of the nature. The metaphor of the moon as a fruit occupies a very prominent position in the Neo-Assyrian hemorrhagical sources. This is the title used for the moon in the royal hemorrhology in Bu Bel Arhi, fruit, lord of the month. And this is known from a single copy from Nineveh. The title Fruit, Lord of the Month, and the contents of this series have been the main sources for the interpretation of the epithet Inbu, which is the fruit, as the new lunar crescent announcing the beginning of a new month. However, in the context of Inbu Bel Arhi, as well as the other sources, of course, this epithet is associated with two different phases of the moon, the crescent and the gibbous. And the epithet of Inbu is almost exclusively restricted to Akkadian sources of the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian periods. It does not appear to be attested in Sumerian sources of the earlier periods, and the only attestation of a Sumerian use derives from a bilingual Shu illa prayer to Sin. Simultaneously, this attestation is the only one found in prayers or hymns addressed to moon god, the only and the unique one. Furthermore, the name fruit is used to refer the moon god in key 97, who is paired with Shamash, again as a dual structure seems here too. And this dual structure is about the maturing, about the nature. One entry suggested that the fruit and Shamash will be made angry in his month. Here in this example, there is a process of the moon god dominating the waters and making the vegetation of and agricultural products fertile. In this process, the task of ripening the harvest with its heat and light belongs to the sun god, to Shamash. Therefore, it is understood that the moon and the sun share duties in the fruiting of the nature and making the harvest fertile too. They are always sharing this kind of task, as I mentioned. So as a result, it has been determined that there is a sharp dual structure or relationship between Sin and Shamash, and I categorize this dual structure in two different aspects, the temporal and the universal ones. And the fact that this duality was not observed among the other gods in the pantheon sets these two gods apart. Moreover, when the Sumerian, Akkadian, and the Assyrian Babylonian sources are evaluated together, it is understood that this duality became more evident during the Assyrian period. This could be attributed to the fact that there are more sources from the Assyrian period, but it is reasonable that the division of this task between the sun and the moon gods was more extensively addressed than in earlier sources. Or maybe it is possible that the development of new societies over time has led the transformation of the old tradition into a more syncretic belief system too. But for me, it's very clear that there is a dual structure between Sin and Shamash during Assyrian period, not even in Akkadian or Sumerian period. Thank you for your consideration.